The Clay Arts Center is a nationally recognized nonprofit center for the advancement and practice of ceramic arts, offering exhibitions, clay classes for adults and children, studio spaces for clay artists, and outreach programs in the community. In January, the Clay Arts Center launched a year-long focus on the integral role of clay in New York art, architecture, and design. Starting with a regional juried exhibition featuring 17 emerging ceramic artists working within a 75-mile radius of the center, which is located in Portchester, New York. The year-long celebration of clay will include 5 innovative exhibitions, several workshops and lectures, 2 collectors' tours, and a symposium. My guest today is Leigh Taylor Mickelson, Executive Director of the Clay Arts Center. She is distinguished as an arts administrator, educator, and curator, and she's a recognized ceramic artist herself. Stay tuned as we turn our sights on a fabulous cultural resource in our backyard, the Clay Arts Center. I'm Alice Bloom. This is A Town and Village Too. Welcome back. Leigh, thanks so much for being my guest.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I mean, I have a dirty little secret. I work in clay as well, and have for a long, long time. It was a resource I found when life was very stressful and I needed to do something totally different from my normal work, which at that time was in law. And I found clay, and it's been a resource that supported me and sustained me for years and years. And wherever I lived and whatever was going on, I always would set aside one evening, one afternoon a week to work in clay.
Well, that's a story I hear a lot at Clay Arts Center.
Do you?
Yeah.
Because I'm always interested in finding people who have, you know, sort of shared interests. First time I went to NCCO, which was the National Clay Conference, I came out of the elevator, my husband was waiting in the lobby of the hotel, and I was just grinning ear to ear, and he said, "What's so funny?" I said, "We were talking about frit, and, and I don't know what, kaolin or something like that." I said, "We all spoke the same language."
Yeah, it is another language, that's for sure.
It
mean,
is.
and when you're around other clay artists, it's, you know, the spouses and non-clay artists just have to tune out.
They do, but it's a very consuming
Yeah.
field. Do you think that people are more interested in clay now than ever before?
Absolutely. I think actually there's been a seismic shift in the field. All of a sudden, clay, which used to be a craft material, is an accepted material in the contemporary arts. You're seeing it in all of the galleries downtown and on the West Coast, on the East Coast, right there along with painting and other sculpture materials. It's about time. It's been a long time coming, and we're so thrilled about it. And we're just hoping that it's not a trend, that clay is hot right now.
Well, I mean, I've been to the Picasso exhibit, the sculpture exhibit at MoMA, which ends probably before our show will air. It'll end, I think it's February 7th, but it's been there all fall and winter. And to my surprise, he worked in clay.
Yes, he did.
I mean, what a shock. And it's inspired me and informed my work as well. When did you start to work in clay?
I started in college, and it was kind of on a roundabout way. I was a double major, English literature and ceramic arts. No, I was double major studio and art and English literature. And I had to either take sculpture or ceramics for my major. And sculpture was full, so I ended up in ceramics by, you know, just as a fluke. I had no interest in working in clay at the time. And within the first week of working with the material, I was hooked. I never went back to another medium, actually.
And clay is a hard medium to work in. I mean, yes, when it's in its wettest form, it's fun to get your hands in the mud. But to bring it to a finished stage is not so easy.
Well, it's easy and it's hard. I mean, I think it's one of the most versatile mediums and the most approachable mediums. I mean, you can put a piece of clay in front of a 4 or 5-year-old, and they will have something to do with it just as much as you or I or anybody at any age. You know, as soon as you touch that clay, it is yours. It's got your fingerprint on it, and it's formed in a way that nobody else can make it. So, in that way, the material is very easy. But you're right that it has there's a lot of technical difficulties in working with it too. There's chemistry. You have to know how to the materials mix together to make clay bodies and glazes. There's different firing temperatures. There is a lot to know, and no clay artist ever stops learning what clay has to offer.
And you need a support network. Not everybody has their own kiln, an oven that fires to 2,000 degrees.
Right, yes. And that's why we have communities like Clay Art Center, where artists join together and share equipment and kilns, and they fire together. They often work together and sometimes collaborate together on making work, and learn from each other. So I think that's why you see organizations like Clay Art Center across the country.
Well, I've seen a lot of places, but few places like Clay Art Center. Now, Clay Art Center is not new. It started, but it had a pretty rough going for a long time.
Well, it started in 1957, so we're almost 60 years old now. In 2017, we'll be celebrating our 60th anniversary. But we've changed a lot over the years.
We have heat.
Yes, now we have heat. It was founded by two artists, Catherine Choi and Henry Okamoto, who really wanted to create a center where ceramic artists could come together to work and share facilities. And it was that for many years. Artists would come to us from all over the world, and there weren't many places like us at that time. In the early 50s, there weren't very many ceramic art centers. And so we've had a lot of artists that have come through our doors over the years and gone off to become famous artists wherever they end up in their clay journey. It changed hands a couple of times, and in the late 90s, it was purchased by Rena Kashyap, who was the former director who ran the center before I took over. And she really transformed it into the center it is today. She developed the education programs, the exhibitions, put a regular schedule of gallery exhibitions going on in there. She filled the studios, she put new windows and heat, and really uplifted the facility. And then in 2007, she turned it into a nonprofit organization, and we were able to broaden our audience to the community and also provide access to the arts to an underserved community as well.
So tell me more about the community outreach programs that you have in Portchester.
Well, it started small. We were just reaching out to the community in Portchester. The Portchester is a very unique town in that we're sandwiched in between two very wealthy communities. And Portchester has the lowest per capita income, second lowest in all of Westchester, and a very high percentage of immigrant families and single mother-headed households. So we saw a need right away to reach the population right there in Portchester. There hasn't been a full-time art teacher in the elementary schools since the early 1970s. So there was a lack of art education in the schools. And so we felt there was this big gap that needed to be filled. So we started by offering free classes to Portchester kids, which we still do. We've expanded the numbers that we reach right now. We reach about 400 kids a year, mostly from Portchester. But we also work with special needs groups. We work with Hope House down the street, who are adults that live with mental illness. And then we work with West Hab, Family Coachman Center at West Hab, which is a homeless shelter for families. We offer clay classes for children coming from there. We also have a wonderful program with Gilda's Club, where we offer free clay classes for men and women living with cancer. And that's held in our satellite classroom in White Plains. We are always looking for opportunities to work with new communities. We just finished a series of classes with the New York School for the Deaf, thanks to Arts Westchester's special needs grant that they got to have us there. And we are always, we get calls all the time from organizations that want to work with us. Clay is a wonderful art therapy material, and we are my community arts director is always coming to us with a new program that's about to begin. It's amazing.
You know, I'm absolutely floored. I knew that you had an outreach program. I knew there was a kids program, but I had no idea of the breadth of it and how much you work. About how many people do you service in these communities?
In the community arts, probably about 5,000. About half of our audience is through our community arts programs right now. We serve between 10 and 12,000 people a year, people who come through our classes and come through our galleries, but then also we do a lot off-site. We are in after-school programs across Westchester and in parts of Connecticut as well. And then we hold community arts programs on-site as well, where we bring communities in. We have busloads of kids come in, for this or that or the other thing. So,
do you have any students who started to work in clay and for whom it's become a life resource? Or people?
Absolutely. I think, yes, I think that we have this wonderful grant-funded program that enables us to hold year-round classes for the middle school, Portchester Middle School and the Portchester High School, where we're able to offer on a weekly basis a 2-hour clay class to a group of 15 students, and it's year-round. And we have seen, we're in our 4th year of that program with the high school. We have seen kids come through that program, stick with us for all 4 years, graduate, and now they're back with us as teachers' assistants. Some of these kids have chosen to go to college when they hadn't decided to go to college before. Others are choosing an arts path rather than another path. It's amazing to see that happening with just the youth that we're having a more intensive relationship with through our grant-funded programs. And then we, all the time, we have adult students that come through our classrooms as students and then, quit their job and then become artists. I mean, we have a number of students who have really dedicated their lives to becoming an artist and have made decisions that have allowed them to do so and make room for their lives so that they can pursue a path in ceramics.
Do you have many students, adult students, who have active careers in challenging professions and still make time for clay?
Absolutely. We offer classes 7 days a week. So we have morning classes where you'll see more people with flexible schedules and perhaps some, more retired professionals, and then we have young professionals in our night classes and weekend classes, and these are people who have robust careers that see us as a place where they can tap into another part of themselves that they don't get to tap into at work. And it's their home away from home. I mean, a lot of people have called Clay Arts Center their home away from home. They look forward to that day where they have class and they come and they focus and they kind of, everything else falls away and they get their hands in clay and they just create. Some people find that same thing in the garden. Some people find it when they walk through the woods. The people who come to the Clay Arts Center are the people who find themselves in clay.
It's just amazing to me how much it has grown. Now, we mentioned earlier the National Clay Conference, NCCA, and
Yes.
I know that you're going. This year is in Kansas City.
Yes, it is. And I actually serve on the board. I recently joined the board as their exhibitions director. So I have a unique perspective on NCCA, kind of being able to sit at the table with other ceramics professionals in the field and put together an amazing program of lectures and panels as well as exhibitions galore. I think in Kansas City there's over 75 exhibitions that will be on around the city.
Well, traditionally the city that hosts the conference gets turned over to clay for a month. And there are often, as you say, 75 to 100 exhibits throughout the community that are available to everybody.
Yes.
Whether or not you're attending the conference.
Right.
There are exhibitions in restaurants and museums and storefronts and
Absolutely.
every place.
And then 5,000 ceramic artists descend on the city and enjoy it all. And what's great is that the thumbprint that is left behind when NCCA leaves the city is that they've kind of expanded people's horizons to the possibilities of clay. Clay is the most versatile medium there is, and it's been around since the dawn of man. The first piece of artwork was ever discovered was clay. It was made out of clay, and it is still a valid material today for expression. And then it's being used in technology in ways that we could have never examined. There's ceramic hips, there's ceramic knives, there's NASA tiles made in ceramics. It's an incredible medium, and it never ceases to amaze me what it can do.
Do you think there's more of an interest in functional or non-functional clay now amongst artists?
I think that it's a mix. I think that a lot of people are drawn to clay because its ability to make useful items. I think people, everyone knows when they think of clay, they probably think of functional pottery, and everybody, it's approachable because of that. We use cups and bowls and mugs in our homes every day. It's one of the most intimate objects that we have in our homes. But when you encounter and you use a handmade object, it's a different experience than using a manufactured object. And when to experience that is kind of like you can't go back. When you experience food off of an object that was made by hand by an artist that you know, or even an artist that you don't know, it changes your experience with food. And I think that draws a lot of people to the material because they also want to learn how to interact with it. But I think also I'm a sculptor, and I really am intrigued by what is done in clay in the sculptural realm, from installation and off the wall and pedestal and life size and diminutive. I mean, it's just I think there's as much to be offered in ceramics and sculpture as there is to be offered in any other material. I mean,
it's interesting that one of the technologies that's affecting clay now is 3D printing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Last year at NCECA in Providence, Rhode Island, there was an exhibit, and some of the things that were being done, I think 3D printing is a company, there were several companies that were participating in that particular display, and the things that were being done were just impossible to believe.
Well, it's really interesting how artists have taken these machines and they have turned them into an extension of their hands. They've just made them another tool, like the potter's wheel or any, like a lathe. I mean, all artists use a tool of one kind or another, and now they're using CNC machines and 3D printers to be another tool to make their artwork. And right now, what I'm seeing in that the digital ceramics and the technologies that are being using is a lot of experimentation, and it's going to be really interesting to see how those tools impact the artwork going forward. I mean, you see more and more academic institutions that are embracing that technology, and artists as well. We're actually going to be putting together an exhibition in 2017 called Reinvented Future Now, which is going to be curated by our program manager, Adam Chow, who also uses digital technology in his practice. And I'm really excited to see that show come together.
Was there resistance in the art world to the 3D printer and technology?
Oh my goodness, yes. I think at first, ceramic artists who had a more traditional academic approach or background really kind of felt like it was cheating, and the absence of the hand was this phrase that was used a lot, and then some artists really thought, no, it's not the absence of the hand, it's just an extension of the hand, just like a brush or a wooden tool. I mean, it's just like maybe one step more, another step removed. But what I've seen is the field just turn right around and embrace the technology. You'll see it in NCECA this year in Kansas City, a whole, it's called the Clay Fab Lab, the Digital Fab Lab. A whole section of the conference is going to be dedicated to demonstrating these digital technologies in ceramics. It's going to be kind of exciting.
You can't hold back progress. I mean, it's happening. Because I remember these conferences were very, how can I say, heated. About the technology.
Yeah, I mean, and I remember back when I was in graduate school in the 90s, it was the craft versus fine art argument, and now it's the handmade versus machine made, and then there's the whole sloppy craft, and these artists who are approaching the medium with absolutely no academic or background in ceramics or training or traditional training in ceramics, and they're using the medium in such a new and different and fresh way. And at first, the field was like, but that's not made well, there's no craft, there's no skill. And in fact, it was quite the opposite. The content was what came first, and it's really interesting to see how the field has kind of embraced that looseness. You're seeing a lot of tight stuff in the digital, 3D printed and CNC machines, but then you're also seeing a lot of looseness.
Do you find there's any tension between the academic artists, the academic people from academic programs, and people who are more studio potters?
I just think that, well, I think studio potters are going to keep making pots, and I think that's great. I think we all need pots. There's a place for functional pottery, and there are artists that are making functional pots that continue to break new ground, and it's important that artists continue to be able to do that with this, utilitarian works. Academia, I think, is really embracing the new technologies, partly because I think that the youth and the people who are in the colleges and now are really wanting to learn that. They're coming to the table with a whole new language that, people who are kind of phasing out of the academia, who have been there for 30 years, don't have. So we're seeing an evolution happen, and these young artists who are taking over academic programs and really changing them, and completely different things are coming out of.
And they're still using their artistic instincts and designing their work.
Oh, yeah.
Using different tools to implement them.
Absolutely.
Perhaps.
I mean, I think that there's just as much value to someone who's using their using their hands and the clay and nothing else, even, or their hands and a potter's wheel. And I think there's as much validity to that process as there is to the artists who are using 3D printers and making molds and slip casting and CNC machines.
There's room for every technique.
Absolutely. I think we've always said that the possibilities in clay are endless, and it's just, and we continue to prove that every year. Something new is coming up.
Well, let's talk about what's happening in our backyard.
Absolutely.
In
Sure.
our backyard, that's the year-long focus that the Clay Arts Center is honing in on clay, starting with an exhibition that's up now, starting in January, called TriState of Mind.
Yes, we're so excited about this year. It's the first year where we've dedicated a whole year of programs under one theme, and that we've developed a series of exhibitions and programs to go along with it. In our backyard is a year-long focus on how clay is an integral role in New York art, architecture, and design. And TriState of Mind was a great show to kick off because it's a regional juried exhibition. It's curated by Leslie Farron, who's a well-known gallerist from Massachusetts, and 17 artists from a 75-mile radius of Clay Arts Center are featured in that exhibition. And
Okay, so that's going to be up for how long?
that's going to be up until the beginning of March.
Okay, so do you need to make an appointment to see it, or?
No, our hours are Monday through Friday, 10 to 6, and Saturday, 10 to 4.
So anybody can just stop off.
Yeah,
Clay
it's
Arts
free.
Center has a parking lot. It's on Beach Street,
Yeah.
and you can just stop in. Will there be any particular festivities in association with this particular exhibit, or has that already taken place?
We had an amazing opening reception on Saturday. We had about 160 people came to the opening. It was a fabulous event. We have a couple of workshops and lectures. We have one of our artists that is featured in TriState of Mind, Roxanne Jackson. She's giving a lecture called Sloppy Craft. So she's really going to kind of dig into that topic that I was just talking about.
Okay.
And then one of the artists, Max Seinfeld, is going to be giving a workshop called Burnout on March 5th. It's a one-day hands-on workshop. He uses he dips combustible materials in slip, which is liquid clay, and then and uses fibers with liquid slip, and then all of those combustible materials fire out in the kiln, and it just leaves this, these very evocative forms that you could never get. So it's a very interesting process.
And it hasn't blown up a kiln yet.
Not yet.
Okay. Glad to know
Not
that.
yet.
Okay, tell me what else is going to be happening. I see you've got exhibits going on all summer. New York.
New York Clay. We're very excited about this exhibition. It's curated by Judith Schwartz, who's a curator, author, and professor from NYU. She has put together an exhibition of 20 artists from that work in Manhattan or one of the 5 boroughs. They're all established artists, as well as some mid-career artists in there. We're really kind of interested in this whole year of investigating whether there's a New York aesthetic in clay. Like if we're just focusing on exhibiting artists that are within a 75-mile radius of Clay Art Center, is there a particular approach to the medium that is particular to this area or not? Is it that it's completely eclectic? We're looking to kind of find out why artists gravitate to New York area and how it impacts their practice. So this group of artists is particularly interesting, and we're going to have a symposium in April that brings together some of the questions that we have that this exhibition is hopefully going to answer.
I know we want to list the other events, but you've been to NCECA, which takes place in a different city in the United States every year, from East Coast, West Coast, mid-country, it's all over. Do you think there's a New York aesthetic?
I'm not sure yet, and I don't want to put my thoughts into the mouths of other people. I want people to come to these exhibitions and absorb them and learn from them. And what I'm seeing so far is a really wide variety of what's happening in our backyard. It's quite expansive. What I want to know, I don't know yet. I don't know until we see all this work together. Are there threads between the work? Is there a freshness here that that can only happen in New York? Is there a multitude of color? I mean, I know that New York Clay has a lot of artists that are working with a figure. Is that something that is a theme that we see in artists that are working here? It's going to be really interesting to hear what others think about it.
Are there other cities that are devoted to clay? I mean, I feel like there's so much going on in New York.
I think, yes. I mean, I absolutely, I mean, I don't know. Well, Kansas City is considered a clay town. I think they like to think of themselves as a clay town. Portland, which is the site of NCECA in 2017. I mean, clay is everywhere right now. I think back in the day, there was a lot going on the West Coast, and there was, a clay scene there that really impacted the field of ceramics for the rest of the country and from then on. But, when you look at it, what's interesting to see is some of those artists started out in New York, whether they went to California. So California gets a lot of credit for setting the tone of modern ceramics. I think that part of what we're doing here is we're bringing the focus back on New York.
Okay. In our own backyard?
In our own backyard, yeah.
Well, Leigh, there's so much to talk about. If people want to know more about In Our Backyard or about the Clay Art Center, where should they go?
ClayArtCenter.org. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and we have a fabulous blog where we're writing about our programs on a weekly basis. There will be a blog post on there this week about how clay can save your brain. It's proven that using different sides of your brain can keep your mind sharp, and you can stave off Alzheimer's and dementia.
Okay, forget luminosity.
Yeah.
Lumosity, I think it is.
Yeah.
Forget going to the gym.
Take an art class. Go to Clay Art
Center.
It's so yeah, you can read about that in our blog.
Well, I look forward to seeing you sometime this year in our backyard. Best of luck to you. I love the Clay Art Center. Can't wait for more people to know more about it.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been my pleasure. I'm Alice Bloom. Thanks at home for watching. We'll see you next time or at the Clay Art Center.